Hi, and welcome to Native Women in Film and Television Conversation Series. We're here today with Grace Dove and myself. Donche Oyata Wianka Poen, people who see this woman, Janelle Romero Conce. Say hello to our wonderful guest, Grace Dove. Hi, Grace.
Hi, nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. We're just going to go right into this because this is a conversation that's long overdue for our Native and Indigenous women in media, and even not in the entertainment industry, right? And I was listening this morning to a conversation by other actresses about this same topic that we're going to go over, and it's a serious thing that as actresses, as actors, that we have to delve into our psyche and our spiritual self and all those layers to get to the character, whichever character that is that we're portraying. I'd like to introduce Grace. Is early known for her role as Hugh Glass's wife in the 2015 film, The Revenant, as well as Ricky, a talented mechanic, in 2018 film, How It Ends. Currently, in 2002, she starred alongside Academy Award winner Hilary Swank in ABC network drama Alaska Daily. And it's, as journalists, shining a light on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And this is one of the topics we're going to talk about, portraying these characters and getting into character, and how do we get out of character. My first film was A Girl Called Hatter Fox. It was 1977. I was 18 years old. It was the first time a Native actress carried a leading role in a contemporary film, and that was 45 years ago. Between us, we have taken on roles with the subject matters of rape, prostitution, domestic violence, murder, missing, and we could go on from here. So I'd like to just dive into this with you, Grace, and it's going to be most likely a heavy conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. We all know as actors, we go to acting class, or we don't, whatever you prefer. But we get a character. Casting directors, we go in front of a casting director. Our agent submits us. We go in front of a casting director, and we get into this character, whichever character that is. And typically for us as Native women and actors, we get roles that are pretty victim related, and a lot of abuse issues. And personally, for me, that's a subject matter that in my personal life, I am an overcomer. I don't like to say survivor, but I'm an overcomer. And so to tap into that when you're up for that kind of role is intense. And so we go to acting class, they tell us how to get into character, but they never say, how do you get out of character? Like, what's the technique to release all of that? And I know when we were at our Red Nation International Film Festival Awards ceremony this past November, Grace, we spoke about having this conversation, and where's that technique of how to get out? Because I know when I did Hatter Fox, I didn't get out of that character for a good 5 years. I didn't know how to get out. And that was I'm sober 42 years this year, but back then I was using and drinking. So I thought I'm just going to get really, really drunk and ask Hatterfox to leave my body, to leave my psyche. That's what I had to do. That's what I did. So I'd love to open the conversation with you, Grace, and talk about this topic. How do we get out of character?
Yeah, I think you're very right in saying that it's not really talked about, let alone taught. I did go to acting school for a number of years, took years of acting classes on top of that. And I really didn't know what I was getting into until I did start in the industry and take on very heavy roles.
Yeah.
Um, like you said, unfortunately, a lot of the roles that we are auditioning for, that we are taking on as Indigenous women, tend to carry a lot of weight and a lot of trauma. That's just the reality of the stories that have previously been told about us. So, I remember being very disappointed and had a difficult time at the beginning of my career when I first started auditioning about a decade ago, um, with just, yeah, like you said, role after role that was just this victim. And I personally didn't see myself that way. I mean, we know the strength in our families. We know our beauty. We know our resilience. We know our humor. But Hollywood wasn't there yet, or anywhere close. So yeah, a lot of the roles were, had to do a lot with abuse. And as a young woman, that was really hard to face, right? I remember thinking, like, is this my career? It's always it's always going to be the either crying or dying or just being hurt in general. And yes, that there's a lot of that in our past, and that there's a lot of truth to that. But that's just such a small piece of it, right? And yeah, I think first going out into the industry and having to face that was really painful.
Well, I don't think it's changed much for us. I mean, we've been making movies for what, over 100 years, right? And here we have Killers of the Flower Moon, and all the women are victims. And they are a sidebar to the story, right? And it's problematic, when our young girls, on the reservation or in urban communities experience this, and they've experienced trauma of domestic violence or rape, or families that have missing girl. I mean, that's really intense. And so for the audience, they're reliving that trauma, right? And for actresses, it's for us, it's like psychically, how do we get out of the role? So I'm going to ask you, Grace, what has been your technique in preparing to get into a role like that and then getting out of, because Grace just starred and won a bunch of awards at our festival last November for Bones of Crows, which will be screening at our next week at our Native Women in Film and Television Festival. But Grace, can you share with us, like, what was that process like? Because that was intense. And you did, God, you were so brilliant in that. That film is brilliant. Clemens is amazing director, writer, producer. But anyway.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I'd say that, like, it's been such a long journey already, and I'm still really growing as I go when it comes to getting into these roles and also getting out. I mean, when I one of my first roles right out of film school, it was a short film with a filmmaker, Doreen Manuel here, who I have looked up to and used as a mentor for many years. And it was my first dive into a character going through the residential school system. And as a young person, still trying to find my identity as an Indigenous person, here in the big city. I currently live in Vancouver on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And it really affected me. It affected me because I finally was doing all this research that we do as actors, right? I was doing all this research into the local communities and how much it's affected us. And I finally let myself emotionally as an adult go there. And it really took me out. And it took a long time for me to be able to recover from that. And that was already over a decade ago. So with every role since then, it hasn't gotten easier with the roles. I just take on bigger roles. And because of the roles that I am choosing to take on, especially with Bones of Crows, the hardest one yet, with that one, I had a real conversation with my family about it, and we talked, and they said, do you think that you can handle this? And because they knew, when I go all in, that means that I'm committing to, bringing the truth of this character to life, and all the layers and all the darkness as well, and having to go through that, because it's not fake, right? My work is real and the acting is real, and I'm going to those places. And so with that one, I remember knowing, like, I was going into something really heavy, but I truly felt in my spirit that it was my responsibility, because, if I didn't do it, someone else was going to, someone had to do it. And I didn't want it to be someone, younger, who might not already have the experience I do. And I wanted to make sure that it was done right in the way that I felt that I was capable of that. So I knew that it was going to be challenging going in, but I didn't even realize, and this was just in the last couple of years, how much that would affect me. And I'd like to say that I know how to get out of characters now, but honestly, I'm still figuring it out, because that took me to so many dark places in my family's history that I still feel in my body. It's taken a lot of connecting to my ancestors, connecting to my own spirituality now. Like, I feel like I finally just healed, like, just let it go, even since I last saw you, like this past winter. And that was over a year later, almost 2 years after filming, because of the weight that I think I carried, but also the weight that I released. So, for me, it took a lot of being able to actually loop back and realize, wait a second, I'm still carrying a lot of this discomfort and a lot of this pain that was brought up, and having to face it really fearlessly and go, what do I need right now? So taking a step back from work, realizing I had to take care of my spirit, talking to elders, really connecting to, like, even just praying for guidance and to be released of what I was carrying, because it kept following me, as because of how much it matters, right? How much our stories matter. And so it really, it took, like, more than I can imagine, like, just to be able to let it go and ask for help, honestly.
Yeah, I know that when I was cast as Hatter Fox, there was a friend of mine, and because I've never lived on a res, I've never, I was raised in Hollywood, actually. But anyway, urban. So a friend of mine, we would walk the streets like at 2 o'clock in the morning, just because was part of the character and getting into the character. And also the experience that I've had up until that time at 18, all through my drinking days, my alcoholism, I had been raped a few times by then, unfortunately. And so I had that in me, and I hadn't healed, right, at all. And then I get this role, and it's an intense role. I mean, for, 85% of the film, I don't say anything. I don't talk. My first line is, I have to go. And back then, you couldn't say even pee. So I just, I say, I have to go. And it to get into that character, I really got in. I carried her, like I said, for like 5 years. And then when I got sober when I was 23, I got into ceremony because I still had remnants of this character in me. This person, it has nothing to do with my life per se, right? Her life in the script, right? So I got really into ceremony to release, completely release. And yeah, it's our truth. So when we're in a role, we're speaking a truth for it to be believable. So part of that has to become from our own experiences. I want to say that I'm happy to see Irene Bedard is now with us, and I want to bring her into the conversation. Hi, Irene.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you could make it. It's
I'm
really
so
great.
glad to be here.
Yeah. So for our listening audience, this I'd like to introduce my friend Irene Bedard, and she has such an extensive career in our industry. She was best known for Susie's song in 1998 film Smoke Signals, and also it was a Sherman Alexie film, but she also played there was different roles with the character Pocahontas, and she played Mary Crow Dog, which is, I miss Mary. And she also worked with Steven Spielberg's Into the West miniseries, and also Songs My Brother Taught Me. And Grace and Irene both worked in Alaska Daily. And Alaska Daily was about journalists going and finding our missing and murdered Native and Indigenous women and girls. So welcome, Irene.
Thank you. This topic is very important, I think, for people to understand sort of what we do. I have a lot of people who will say, I say I'm a terrible liar, and people say, well, what do you mean? You're an actor. And to go back to your conversation previous to this, no, what I think, I'm a terrible poker player too. What I think visual medium, what I'm feeling shows up on my face, and it is primarily a visual medium, but it is the medium of storytelling. And so when we are in particular telling stories of people who actually lived or communities that do exist, we're looking deep into not only that person's culture and history, but also into what are the mitigating factors that creates this person to be the way that they are. And for us, for as a Native American female, Indigenous woman, kind of jokingly called the early part of my career as sort of the manifest destiny era.
That's a
And
good
so
one.
that meant going through characters that dealt with first contact with horrific issues at hand, portraying things like Sand Creek Massacre, which we could not portray as it had happened because then it would have been Caligula, and Wounded Knee, and as Grace was saying, I mean, when I filmed Lakota Woman after having filmed Squanto: A Warrior's Tale, um, and she as his wife represented all those missing people in his life. When he came back after being kidnapped and shown off like an animal, his whole entire tribe was decimated, was no longer in existence from from warfare and disease. And so she sort of represented that disappearance. So right from the very start, um, you know, I I had, these times where I'm looking at and realizing what our blood is like in this dirt that we walk upon today. And after filming Lakota Woman, though, I had decided that I would do best, um, but to my for my own health, to to drive away, to drive from South Dakota back to where I lived then in New York City, to have some moments of decompression, to have that time where I'm going across the country and kind of bearing witness to that dirt along the way, and um letting my spirit catch up to where I was, because when I filmed Squanto, um, I left Nova Scotia and bopped right into Manhattan, and it was very jarring for me, very difficult to be able to kind of pull away from all those emotions and feelings, from even those understandings. My mother was plucked from her home and taken to the boarding school, and was highly abused, and for me to then do Squanto, and kind of realizing and going through the emotions of what that's like for a person. Of course, it builds deeper empathy, but what it also does is kind of leave you there. And so I've learned over the time, as I've kind of joked about how I was asked, while I was at Indigipop X, to be on their horror panel. And at this time, I had done just one Stephen King project. So I thought, well, this is interesting. I mean, my friends laugh at me because I can't even watch Halloween commercials, right? And so they're saying, Irene, how are you doing this? And well, it's all in your imagination, there, and your research and those things. But I realized, as I was having this conversation, that basically I have been telling the zombie apocalypse. That manifest destiny for us is that I have passed death 101. I have died in so many ways. I've been hung 3 times. So I raped, disease, of course, bullets. And I think that, we as storytellers, have to look to our ancestors and have to have that balance, of our own center, our own heart. As we know, the 7 directions are the 4 cardinal directions, and then up out into the universe and to the core of the earth. But the seventh direction is your heart, you as a human being. And when I think about these characters, I refer to them as she. She's doing this. This is where she's coming from. It took a little while for me to feel comfortable watching myself, which I still don't. But one thing I noticed is that those, like for instance, Susie Song, um, because I referred to her as she, I think also this she, as we know, where our bodies, our molecules are completely different every 7 years. So, I'm able to kind of look at her as she and her, and kind of look at the story of it and have that step back from it, that it's not so much so jarring to see up on the screen where you're having this inner life of this other person, and then you see on screen yourself, and it's very jarring, right? You notice those things in your own,
Yes.
in this tool that that you wished you could, do this or do that, or you would have made a different choice on this, and that kind of self-criticism that has to occur in this job. And when I say self-critique, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
self-criticism, that's another one, but
That is.
yeah. But it's a difficult thing to be able to pull out. And I really enjoy what Grace was saying about saying those prayers, asking to have this spirit that you've embodied, move on in her own way.
Yeah. Well, so for our listening audience, we are talking about how to not only get into character in a film, but then how do we release that person out of our psyche and our cells and our body and our mind and heart and all of that. But it's interesting though, because even, and I'm referring to when I did Hatter Fox, because that was the most intense character that I've played in my 45 years in this industry. And because I related to the character, there's still tiny bits of her, because like you said, I mean, there's truths, right? There's truths about our own experience when we're watching. Like even I had to watch it a few months ago with a friend that wanted to see it. We're working on something, and I am removed most of from her, but I felt so much empathy for her and what she went through, and what she took on, right, in her life, and the cards she was dealt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, we're so fortunate, I feel, to be in this industry, and that we've chosen to be in this industry, and that we've made a conscious decision to be in this industry as actors and creatives. I wanted to ask both of you, hmm, I want to talk about later where we go from here, but right now I'd like to discuss the roles that we've played in the past and the roles that are on our table now, right? That we're looking at now to film in the future. How do you feel? What do you feel about to continue to take on roles like this? Because these kind of roles are Academy Award-winning characters, maybe, or SAG, or even though I don't do them for awards, but like those are the trauma roles are what, gets you nominated, right? That's the
Well,
history.
the depth of character, I think, is,
There we go. There we go.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, and those roles, whether they are biopics or not, the fact of the matter is that Native people, Indigenous people, First Nations people have been through a lot. We have this multi-generational trauma that is stitched into the history of this continent, of Turtle Island. Colonization is something, and decolonizing our minds and hearts and spirits is something that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And I think, I'll just say, this kind of running joke I have is the next thing I'm doing is a comedy. Thank goodness. I'm so tired of being murdered. And, I'm so happy that we are getting these chances to have more comedy, which is also, honestly, comedy is well, it's based in you know the dark sides of ourselves, right? You know, our fears and our mistrusts and our faults and our, you know, that what is funny, you know, it's funny that tickling is a form of pain. And what is funny oftentimes is always, it has a dark side. So no matter what, you know, I mean, I think that's just looking at somebody from a full perspective, right? No matter what, you want them to be full, three-dimensional, 360-degree characters. And you always want to have that. So that means taking the crookeds with the straights no matter what. But I'm definitely ready for a comedy because, you
Yeah.
know, we're funny. That's how we survive.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it reminds me, like, in the 80s, I think it was like right when the first year of my sobriety, I love challenging myself. Um, I committed to 1 year to do stand-up comedy at the Comedy Store on Sunset. I can't even retain a joke, okay? So what the heck was I thinking? And I had my friends help write it, and Charlie Hill used to come in and hear me, and I just miss all the guys that they're all passed away, but all Sam Kennison, all of us. I used to hang out with all of these guys, and they really encouraged me, and it was the most terrifying thing. But you know, when I make a commitment and I say I'm going to do something, I do it, you know, until it's so it's once a week for 1 year. And wow, I would shake. At one point I said, I'm just going to hold my guitar. The hecklers, oh my God. It's like and it's very hard to do comedy. It really is. But we have so many great comedians, not only in our community, but you know, Carol Burnett, and you know, so many that have paved the way. So, but yes, we do. Our sense of humor is very unique and needs to be in more films and films created with our sense of humor.
Grace, do you want to do comedy?
I always say that I'm more of the straight guy. I can be
You're
really
a straight guy in comedy.
I can be funny, but it's like really dry, which I'm okay with. I think that you know, for me it's like I just know that the right role is coming, and I'm not really searching for anything or reaching for anything. Now that I've poured so much of my spirit into Bones of Crows and Alaska Daily, I feel really fulfilled, and I feel like I've really done my part. And so, you know, moving forward, like I would love to be able to, you know, give my spirit a little bit of a break, and continue to heal and to get strong, and to, you know, do some roles that really see us in the future, and to really show my generation succeeding because of all the generations behind me that have lifted me up, that fought for me to be here. So I really want to see that success. And so that's what I'm attracting right now. And I can feel it coming. So I'm just really excited to be able to step into what I've been working on and to step into that light.
Yeah, that's a good affirmation. That's really positive. And yeah, it's like finally, you know, because of series like, you know, Reservation Dogs and such, you know, I feel the last 3 to 5 years we have proven to be very bankable. Our talent is very extraordinary, and we have tons of talent in Indian country, in front of and behind the camera. And so it's time that, you know, and the industry is, you know, taking the baby steps, but I feel that what's really exciting is that we're taking it on ourselves. And, you know, even like with conversation series like this, or with our Red Nation International, you know, film festival and award ceremony with our Native women in film and television, and others that are doing it, you know, across the country, right, in our community. It's really exciting. It's very exciting. And for our students and our young ones to experience this, what we're doing, setting the ground for them in the positive and uplifting and encouragement. That's what I love. That's what I love. What all of this is about. And I'm going to share a little bit, because I have to do the, you know, some of the history in our industry regarding our Native and Indigenous women. So Hatter Fox was in 1977, and that was the first contemporary Native woman story produced where a Native woman carried the lead. And it took Hollywood 42 years later to do another contemporary story. And that was Netflix's Chambers in 2019. And the disheartening statistics regarding Indigenous representation in Hollywood, it is continuing. And it's changing, but it's still continuing because they don't, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Between 2003 and 2019, America did not see Native actresses in a co-star, guest star, or series regular role in an episodic television on ABC, CBS, NBC, or Fox. Back then, I used to always work as an episodic actress. And then all of a sudden in 2003, there was nothing for us. America didn't see, look at these beautiful ladies here. They didn't see that. They didn't experience us. So for 16 years, these major networks disregarded the Native women's narrative, contributing to the dangerous epidemic of invisibility of Native women and girls in our society. There is a direct link with our missing and Indigenous women and girls, and the direct link to the industry. Because if we're not represented and we're not heard and we're not seen, we don't matter. And so these people can continue to do what they do and not be held accountable, including the industry. Regarding cinema, Hollywood produced Dances with Wolves in 1990, and it took 25 years for Hollywood to produce The Revenant in 2015. In 2022, we had Prey, and now in 2023, we have Killers of the Flower Moon. And moving forward, I mean, and I could go into all the other success films. I mean, we mentioned them, the ones that you both have starred in and have, you know, been in, and as well as myself and others. And so today, even though we had Alaska Daily and we had you know, the one that Tentoon was in, I can never pronounce it right. The series that Tentoon was in on primetime television, Swamp Town. Am I saying it right? Swamp Town. Anyway, one season. To me, this is a joke. I say, oh, they just did it as a tax write-off. They just do the checkbox. We did the Indian thing, you know, checkbox, tax write-off, boom, let's move on to the next, right? So today, as of right now, on primetime television, on the 4 networks, we don't see us. We're not there. Again. So I'd like to open the conversation with, where do we go from here? Where do we go? What are we doing?
Speaking for myself, I have Iron Woman Productions, and as far as producing goes, I have a 4-part series with John Leguizamo that I co-produced, and called The Green Veil. and it is also it's about the systematic removal of our children, both via adoption and to the boarding schools by our governments. And it's looking up in so many ways about uh, having come from, like I said, the Manifest Destiny era of my career into this one where I'm now creating content, and yet at the same time have been for a while, and having to go through the same conversation over and over again about how not only are we a demographic, there are 400 million indigenous people worldwide, um, and we have indigenous people worldwide who watch content that follows into that purview, because it's important to us. It's important to indigenous people worldwide to have that recognition, regardless of where your actual feet are on this beautiful planet that we live on. There are people who have interest in those subjects, but that was an answer that I received on the LA Lakers plane, doing the press for a project I was on with one of the heads of the of the network that it was on, and him blankly just saying to me that we are not a demographic. We can see that changing, and that's wonderful. But I think it's also a hunger and a need for all peoples to come into our universe, but also to remember in their own way what it was like to be indigenous, because after all, we were all indigenous to this planet. We all had drums and songs and stories, relationship to the earth, relationship to our elders and our ancestors, and that understanding of deep time, that knowledge that what we do today affects the 7 generations to come after us. And songs and stories that related to where we came from, language that was a view of the universe, and after the majority of people paved over it and kind of look at it through a very patriarchal lens, I think people are hungry to see us and to see what it might feel like to think through a matriarchal lens, as most of our cultures are matriarchal, and matrilineal. So I have high hopes for where we are headed into the next generation here, and I'm so excited for the writers that we have gotten to work with in the rooms who are Indigenous and First Nations, the people who are now also directing and also producing and are getting those chances to be in those rooms that I'm hearing more and more from colleagues and people in the industry who are flat out saying, we need some native content, and can just send us everything you've got or everything you're working on. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of when you're sharing, Irene, that Lily and Zon McLaren are perfect examples when the industry nurtures us. When they nurture us, right? Because you could see with Lily how they're nurturing her, right? And you can see with Zon as an executive producer and an actor, how they're nurturing him. But it can't just be one. Look at us. There's all of us. right? So that's what we do here at Red Nation Celebration Institute. We nurture our own as much as we can, and with whatever funding we have. That's what we do. Grace?
I think Irene, nailed it. That's exactly it, is that, we very much need to just continue making our own projects. I think that's the most important, being involved in every single way, right from the beginning in creating our stories. And, as an actor, like I want to, as I said, see us in the future and hear how we're doing now. And I think that we need to tell those stories. And I see that happening. So it's very exciting, but as you mentioned, there's still not enough. That's the problem, right? Is that there's still not enough roles. There's still not enough projects. It feels like we're starting to get that recognition, but there's still so much talent that's not being recognized yet, because I know the talent is there. We just need more opportunities, and more seats at the table. And that's what's coming, and that's what we're all doing here today.
Yeah, it's all about, at the end of the day, it's show business and it's about money. At the end of the day, if we're going to, speak the truth and tell it like it is, right? So it's investment, right? So if you can invest, if the industry can invest in a film like Killers of the Flower Moon, millions of dollars, it's a risk. Getting up in the morning and taking a breath is a risk. Walking outside, it's a risk. Investing in Grace is a risk. Investing in Irene is a risk. Investing in watching this conversation, for our viewers when they do, it's a risk, right? It's a risk to invest, right? So when they invest that kind of money into Killers of the Flower Moon, it's like, then I feel challenging. They need to invest in in a director, writer, producer, lead actors from our community, to invest that kind of money, because we've proven to be bankable. We've proven to be successful. We've proven that we're talented, and we've proven that we're very capable for years now. For years. I'm getting old, guys. So it's like, I'm excited about the future, and I'm excited about the future because, for many reasons, but one of the reasons is, years ago, Red Nation Celebration Institute launched the first streamer. Before anyone was streaming, there was only one other streamer, and that was YouTube. And they had goofy stuff back then. They didn't have real content. And so we have a streamer that has all native content, right? Where globally anyone could watch. I knew back then the future was this online machine, whatever the technology, right? And I personally got tired of waiting for the industry to invest in us. So I said, I'm just going to start my own television network. And I did. It's like when we first launched it, we had 10 million viewers in 37 countries when we were free for many years. Now we're subscription based. And when we first launched it, the system crashed. We didn't know that was going to happen, and we had to figure out how to get it back up online. And it was just so much fun in the early days of the streaming technology machine. But, like Irene shared, she has her own production company. We have Red Nation Films, and, I was shortlisted for an Academy Award for my short American Holocaust. When it's all over, I'll still be Indian. And so I've been challenged by a handful of incredible, brilliant producers to do my 90-minute version. Because back then, everyone said, how can you do a Native Holocaust, in 90 minutes? And back then, 24 years ago, when it was released, documentaries weren't in. The only other big feature was Muhammad Ali. So So I did a short and entered and didn't pay attention to film festivals, entered into the Academy Awards, got shortlisted with no campaign. So these producers came to me this year and said, you did this with no campaign and your vision. Imagine if, we invested in you and you did your 90-minute version and we did a campaign. So that's what I'm currently working on. And I had to really pray about it. Do I want to take on this subject matter? Do I want to go through all of those feelings and changes and psyche and all of that? Do I want to take that on? Because I've done so much healing, right? Yes, I've said yes. So we're going to do it, and and there's going to be a book with it that's being released before November to go with the 90-minute. But we have a lot of projects on the table right now, a horror film and a TV series that's being looked at and pitched, and we're really excited about it. But I want to also let the viewing audience know that March 1st through the 8th, we have our 15th annual Native Women in Film and Television Film Festival, the Matriarchs of Cinema, Women of Influence, Decolonizing the Entertainment Industry. And we have 45 films directed by women.
Wow.
45 films. This is, huh?
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All these women, gorgeous, gorgeous, talented women. And you know what? This is the 7th year in a row that we have surpassed film festivals like TIFF, Toronto, Cannes, Sundance, Tribeca, and the Academy Awards in the terms of sheer numbers of women directed films. This is 7th year in a row. So we've screened over 177 films directed by women. Yeah. So it's exciting. It is exciting. And as a creator, content creator, I feel when the door shuts, that's my revolution. And my mom raised me with there's no such word as can't, and anything is possible. So I carry that energy of my mom, that spark that she gave me, because it's all possible. I've proven it.
Mhm.
It is possible. So let's end this conversation. Is there any last remarks that or anything we'd like our viewing audience to know, something that's coming up or being released or anything?
Well, one thing that's interesting right now for me is of course Avatar: The Last Airbender. What's interesting is previous to now, really, it would not have been imperative or even thought of, even a thought process to hire Indigenous people to portray even the well, they're the northern tribe and the southern tribe of the waterbenders, and to even have that as a thought process that maybe we should, even though it is an imaginary land and imaginary tribes, these concepts, these even the attire has been inspired by Indigenous people, and maybe perhaps we should think about hiring Indigenous people. And I think that's another step that we should look forward to, that that we are a part of the fabric of this contemporary universe, that we can be, traveling in space. We should be thinking about what are we like in the future? What are we like, let's say 444 years from now? What kinds of traditions and concepts will be maintained. Maybe in the future, it will be only Indigenous people, and that, this prevailing society will have, had its time, and that, ideas of indigenized mind and spirit and soul is what prevails. I mean, we don't know what the future holds, but we can always dream of it through film and storytelling.
Exactly. Well put. Yes. Grace.
That sounds great. I'll see you in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank both of you, Grace and Irene. I'm so grateful, and I love both of you and the talent that both of you have. Anyway, we will and we are continuing to grow our narrative in every way that we can. How's that?
That sounds fabulous. Thank you so much for the conversation and the support.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And for everybody out there, remember to tune in to or visit our website at nativewomeninfilm.com and look at all the 45 films that are screening in person at the Grove, at the AMC, the Grove, and also streaming on our television network, Red Nation Television Network. And we'll see you at the movies.
Thank you.
Hello.